CIPA numbers show that February 2021 sales match those of February 2020. Does this mean that the market has bottomed out or is even reversing? And how easy is it to edit C-Log 3 from the new firmware update for the Canon EOS R5? This and more after the intro. Thanks for tuning in to The Ordinary Filmmaker. Subscribe to get notification of new videos like this one so you don't miss any news, rumors, gear reviews, or tutorials. And a big thanks to Atomos for sponsoring The Ordinary Filmmaker. I'm using the Ninja 5 external recorder for all my studio work as it really does save me a ton of time in post. So if you want to speed up your projects in post, well, use my links down below to purchase your own Ninja and at the same time help support this channel. And now for the news. CIPA seems to indicate that 2021 is off to a better start than 2020, but that doesn't mean that the camera market has stopped its steady decline. Now, all these numbers might have some draw the conclusion that the market has stopped its steady decline. I don't see it that way. February shipments were the same as February 2020, though one could argue that February 2020 was a normal month while February 2021 was hampered by supply and product shortages. And this argument does make sense. 2021 is still very much constrained. From cameras to electronics and cars, it's difficult getting inventory even today. A couple of weeks ago when I was at my local Toyota dealership getting an oil change, I was talking to one of the sales guys and he told me that they're having trouble getting inventory, and some customers that are willing to purchase are even waiting up to 4 months to take delivery. I expect the camera market to begin to return to normal sometime in the third quarter in time for NAB 2021. But let's get back to the numbers. The way I see it, a single data point in a steady decline, it doesn't really hold water in a time where we're dealing with supply shortages, global pandemic. So I don't really see these numbers as a cause for celebration, not when the trend in camera sales has been trending downward since 2013. We may not know the full impact of this extraordinary time until 2022 or 2023 to really be able to determine if the market has bottomed out or, better still, is reversing. Now, that being said, let's dive into the numbers as there are some interesting trends that are unlikely to be affected by external market environmental factors. Over the same time last year, DSLR units are down 15% to 390,000 units, while mirrorless units are up 3%. Now, the trend down in DSLRs is expected as the last major producer of DSLRs, Canon, has committed to 100% producing mirrorless systems or mirrorless cameras in their R system. Now the mirrorless segment, well, it makes up 53.7% of the market. That's an increase of almost 5% over 2020. Still, I would have expected a slightly better than 3% increase in mirrorless sales. Compact sales, well, they performed worse than DSLRs, being down 20%. And this number really isn't that big of a surprise as smartphones continue to dominate the consumer market with improved computational power and additional capabilities. I'd say that the market has its days numbered. Now the numbers are clearly showing a shift from micro four thirds and APS-C to full frame. Interchangeable lenses are up 10% for full frame and larger, while micro four thirds and APS-C are down. What do you make of these numbers? Has the market stabilized, or is this just a blip? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But the one thing that really surprised me the most is not that the DSLR sales are down, but that mirrorless sales are only up 3%. And that to me is not a good number. I really have trouble seeing the market stabilizing with mirrorless sales only being up 3% while DSLRs are down double digits and, well, compact cameras are also down double digits. Maybe it's lenses that's saving everybody, but right now, this is not a cause for concern, or sorry, this is not a cause for celebration. But let's go behind the scenes. So in this episode of Behind the Scenes, I want to talk about C-Log 3. Now, since we got firmware update 1.3 for the R5, R6, and 1DX Mark III, there's been a lot of people complaining about issues. Now, obviously, we did get 1.3.1 to fix some major issues on the R6, but I've received a lot of comments from people saying I'm having trouble. I keep it on C-Log 3, but sometimes it jumps off, or my camera will freeze, or other strange anomalies are happening. Yesterday was the first day I actually shot a lot with my camera in C-Log 3. Now, since the firmware update came out, I've been shooting a lot of videos, but I'm shooting the same settings every day, day in and day out with my camera, so it's not really a big issue. And of course, I'm not actually recording with the R5. I'm recording with the Ninja 5, so that could help make my life easier. So yesterday was Easter Sunday, and I decided to do an Easter egg hunt with my son. Well, I didn't decide it. He kind of told me we're doing an Easter egg hunt. So I spent about half an hour hiding eggs all over the backyard, and he said, "Make it difficult, Daddy." So I did. Some of the eggs are about 20 feet up into the trees. But my son, I know he's a resourceful little guy, so I thought he'd figure things out and eventually get up there. And as you can see here, he's running around, and he's excited, obviously, and he's trying to get the eggs that are in the tree, and you can see they're pretty high up there right now, and he's having an awful lot of fun. But for me, what was the most enjoyable part afterwards is how easy it was to grade. Now in some of these scenes you'll see I still haven't quite got the grading right, and that's because when I went to do the color balance, there was no real neutral or middle gray in the scene for me to properly balance, and those are where I have to go back and edit later. And the reason why I didn't get it perfect is I'm using my M1 13-inch MacBook. And the problem with that is the screen just isn't big enough to really see how good the color grading is. I really need to see that on a bigger screen. So quite often what I do with these videos, especially when this one's almost 5 minutes long, the clip, is I'll grade it, I'll edit it, I'll put it together, and then I'll export it, watch it on the big TV, and see how good it looks. And I was pretty happy with this. There's just a few that I have to fix, but in terms of grading, this is so much easier than C-Log 3. Now, some of you have said, well, I don't really see a huge amount of dynamic range improvement, and it is there, but you're going to have to be in certain scenes. It's going to either be really dark or some other challenging scenes where, it's lit by candlelight, and you're going to see the differences there. But in most of the scenes that I was shooting yesterday, no, I didn't see a huge difference. But the real big benefit to me was after I balanced it, and balancing was generally pretty simple. Now, my son was wearing some shorts or some pants that were pretty close to middle gray, which I used quite a bit. I used some pavement slabs, but there are some scenes where I just don't have that, and I'm having to tweak it a little bit better. But once I got the balancing done, which is normally pretty simple, if I just use a middle gray card, balancing card, it would go a lot easier, but I always forget that, so I always struggle in post with some scenes. But it's so easy. It was Canon Log 1. I always found that I was fighting with it. I always found that the colors, it was just very, very difficult. Whereas with C-Log 3, it makes editing log footage just an absolute breeze. And most of the times what I was doing is I was just bringing down the shadows a little bit, or I was raising the highlights a little bit, or I was adjusting the midtones. And then, of course, I would adjust the saturation. Now, if you're looking at getting started with grading your footage, don't worry about adjusting your highlights, midtones, and shadows for saturation. Now, for as far as the lighting goes, yes, you do want to adjust those separately. But if you're starting out, just go ahead and adjust the master wheel. You're going to find it's going to be a little easier. When you've got all that stuff figured out, then you can start individually adjusting the midtones, the highlights, and the shadows, because it does become a little bit more tricky. And you're not going to get it perfect by adjusting the master, but for most ordinary filmmakers, you're going to be pretty happy with it. Now, when you do get to that one scene where you go like, yeah, I'm not happy with the results here, that's the one where you leave the master alone. That's when you know you're ready to adjust them individually. And you're able to look at the scene and say, okay, you know what, obviously I'm having trouble with the colors and the shadows, so let's try bringing up the shadows a little bit. And you don't bring it up all the way, just a little bit, and then adjust the highlights, and then then adjust the midtones, and then go to the highlights. Or maybe the opposite around. You've got a scene with a lot of highlights in it, so go ahead and adjust the saturation for the highlights, and then the midtones, and then the shadows. And that's usually a pretty good way of doing it. But again, I'm pretty amazed at how easy, again, looking at this footage here, grading was just such a simple task. And as far as issues with my Canon, the R5 didn't once shut off. It didn't switch off of C-Log 3 at any point. Now I have these in manual mode. These are not part of a custom setting. So usually when I'm shooting outside with my son, I will use manual mode because, well, every scene I'm shooting is slightly different. There were a few areas where I did clip the highlights, but that was because we're going from sun to shade, and I would adjust the ND filter, and that would work for most of what I was shooting. But then I started to be in the sun a bit more, and I stopped the filming, adjusted the ND filter, and started shooting again. So I only had to toss away a little bit of footage, but because I knew I was going to run into some issues, I recomposed, started shooting some more footage with the ND filters adjusted, and what I was able to come up with over the entire scene is a pretty consistent look and feel. But that's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe for your chance to win 2 Angelbird 128GB AV Pro MK2 V90 SD cards along with a dual UHS-2 card reader. Or you could also win a Ulanzi LED light package with accent lights, an underwater light, and various other flat panel lights to light your subject, or as a starter kit for starting your own channel. I'll be awarding these 2 prize bundles once the channel reaches 30,000 subscribers. And then, of course, once the channel reaches 100,000, I'm going to be awarding a brand new Canon EOS R5 full-frame mirrorless camera to one lucky viewer. And before I sign off here, just a reminder that I do have the Ordinary Filmmaker baseball cap available for sale on my channel. Actually, go to ordinaryfilmmaker.com and you can purchase it there. And I think about $10 from each sale goes to supporting the channel. So if you like supporting the channel and you want a nice little ball cap, I mean, you are, after all, the Ordinary Filmmaker too, right? Consider. Anyhow, thanks so much for, sorry, I'm getting distracted here because my family's starting to move around upstairs, so I better close this off. Thank you very much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. We'll see you again soon.